God's going to judge them, and they're not going to be able to say, but God, what about? They're not going to be able to do that. They're without excuse. In Romans 1, verse 22, Paul says that people become fools when they deny the existence of God. I want you to also notice the word handiwork back in verse number 1. That term illustrates God's great power. In Psalm chapter 8, verses 3 and 4, it refers to the heavens as the works of God's fingers. When we go to Genesis chapter 1, we find out that God spoke most of creation into existence, but then he fashioned man out of the dust of the ground. God's handiwork. Man is God's highest creation and is special only because he was created in the image of God. We can think, we can choose, we have a conscience that makes us aware of what's right and wrong. We have a spirit that is made to fellowship with God. And when we accept the reality of a creator God, we begin to realize we were made for a purpose. If we have a purpose, then we also have a responsibility before God. Because of the unique relationship with God, we understand that life is sacred and that every person deserves to be treated with respect and concern. It all goes back to the fact that there is a master designer, a creator. Now, the most dominant feature in God's creation is the sun. And David talks about that at the end of verse number 4 and into verse 5 and 6. Even in the most remote area in the world, the sun rises and the sun sets. Many pagan religions deify the sun in the heavens. They don't know how to explain it, so they deify it. But God didn't create the sun to be worshipped. He created the sun to provide for man's need for light and heat and to help guide them to himself. And David talks about in the last part of verse number 4 through verse 6 that the sun is like a bridegroom who excitedly leaves his house on his wedding day to go and get his bride. Now, that kind of helps us. We got to kind of think about how weddings were during the Old Testament times. Because basically, and we know this even from the story about Mary and Joseph, that there was a betrothal period